Coming up, a real-world scourge invades the world of fantasy. We have the information on this month's cancellations and projects put on hold due to the coronavirus pandemic. You've heard the stories, now learn the science behind the theory that D&D can help children on the neurodiversity spectrum succeed in school and in group settings. If you've seen Kevin the director's videos, you'll know he's a devoted fan of cosplay. We'll talk with him about his passions and how they intersect with his day job. And the game of whodunit meets Dungeons & Dragons. Our unboxer takes his first look at D&D Clue and gives you his verdict. It's March 28th, the last Saturday of the month. That means it's time for Multiverse Monthly.
From the D20 News Network, where the roles come first. This is Multiverse Monthly.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us. A real-life health crisis causes disruptions all around the world, including here in the RPG community. Now, on the surface, others may say even thinking about something like gaming isn't serious under any circumstance. But of course, many of you are relying on income from your creative projects to either supplement or to be your sole source of income. This story consumed the entire month of March, and among the biggest casualties from the fantasy community was GaryCon, which was forced to cancel its annual celebration of D&D creator Gary Gygax, and which would have been wrapping up this weekend in Lake Geneva. Those who could were able to run their games or speaking events at GaryCon's digital event online. And just last week, our friends at AFK the web series announced they were canceling the Kickstarter intended to fund its third and final season. AFK showrunner Peter Haynes announced they will be releasing a comic book-style spin-off of the series, page by page, for members of their Patreon, in the hope to keep fans' interest live until it's safe to produce a show to justify a crowdfunding campaign. Found Familiar Coffee, another one of our friends and D20NN coverage topics, announced last weekend they're preparing to temporarily shut down as their Kansas City area is asked to shelter in place. And we've seen no end of posts and retweets on our social media feeds from those who have been laid off from their jobs as a result of the pandemic. It's a trying time for us all, and at the end of the show, I'll try to give everyone some words of hope and encouragement. Moving on now to more cheerful topics in our community. If you've been to more than one cosplay event in the last year or so, then you've probably run across Kevin the director. He's an avid documentarian taking his camera across the country to film some of the spectacular costumes found at geek conventions. In this interview, which was recorded just as the word coronavirus was starting to become common language on TV news, we learned more about Kevin the director and why his travel plans were actually in the process of slowing down. All right, first off, Kevin, thank you for being here for us.
It was my pleasure.
Let's go from the beginning. How did we get to where we are today with your YouTube channel?
Well, it kind of started because of my friends. Like my friends, MemeMux713 had a YouTube channel. I was always helping him out with his content. Same with Realty Dragon. And we'd always be like, you know, hey, you have to have kind of like a handle or something. And I'd always remember I had like this old not Facebook, but MySpace account back in high school when I wanted to be a famous film director. I called myself Kevin Director on MySpace because you couldn't really call yourself Kevin Bianchi in MySpace because you have this like handle. So I just kind of came up with that. It's kind of like a misnomer or a moniker or whatever. But like I'm not more of a videographer than a film director, but still I enjoy making projects that have high production quality, but it kind of have that cinematic look in that sense. And I guess YouTube really started taking off more when I started doing more cosplay music videos, and the more I started doing them, the more people kind of responded to them, and I figured, okay, let's see if we can make it to 100, and we made it past 100 last year. So right now I think we're about 140 cosplay music videos in, and we're gonna have I just released part 1 of my Katsucon 2020 video like literally 2 days ago, or 2 nights ago actually, but we're going to be releasing part 2 on Sunday, and the conclusion of the Katsucon 2020 trilogy Thursday, a week from now. So yeah, after that, got a little bit of R&R to kind of finish up some client projects, but also got to start getting money together for some cosplays, as well as some other flights out of town, which include Power Morphicon in Labor Day weekend, as well as Star Wars Celebration the week before.
So it sounds like directing and filmography has been a passion for a very long time for you. What about cosplay and the things that you're actually taking videos of?
Well, I've actually been in the cosplay community as well as the convention community, particularly since the year 2005. I didn't really get into cosplay until 2000, I want to say 7, the year Pirates of the Caribbean 3 came out. That's when I debuted my first cosplay, which was Captain Jack Sparrow, and I did a lot of different Johnny Depp style cosplays. Sweeney Todd, I did the Joker, I did the Red Turbo Ranger. Those were probably the 4 cosplays I had at the time, and I even did a skit when I went to the Art Institute of Houston, where I kind of was, I guess, trying to think of an idea, and I just kind of bounced ideas off. It was kind of like Nutty Professor meets Kevin Director, where it's just multiple characters, and I'm just talking to myself. It was a weird concept, but it was fun to say the least. But however, most of my skits now I'm still kind of figuring out some skits. I have one skit written out, but to get back to your question, I've always been a part of the convention community, and I've just enjoyed it. Like the first convention I went to was KamikazeCon, and I just enjoyed it so much I wanted to go again and again. So like originally it was like 2 cons a year, then several years down the line it was maybe 3 or 4 cons a year, then 5 or 6 cons a year. Last year was a little over 20 cons. So this year I'm trying to reduce that number down a little bit because I want to save up my paid time off at my job at MD Anderson, but also save up a little bit of the De Niro's for some other projects.
Are you comfortable talking about your day job?
Yeah, no. My job is with MD Anderson Cancer Center, particularly in Houston, Texas. I work with the diagnostic imaging sector. My job particularly is involved with videography, photography, and editing, and sometimes conference room maintenance. Well, I wouldn't say conference room maintenance is my main thing, but I try to do the best thing I can, which is basically plugging the power cord back in and plugging some cords back in here and there and praying to God that it works.
I remember that one. And it's cool that you're getting to follow your passion both at your day job and with this side gig.
Yeah, no, like with YouTube, it's more kind of like a way with YouTube, I find it more of a creative outlet because obviously with jobs, you have to follow things to a certain letter and also with jobs, you have to basically make the video or photography or whatever to whoever you're working with because it's their project. They have the final input. Where YouTube, I have the final input because I don't have to be like, oh, wait, is this good? Oh, wait, I don't have to answer that because this is my project. I know it's good. Out. And if someone has anything else to say, like, oh, this is just, this or that, I'll be like, hey, you, okay, with a winky smiley face. But no, it's just YouTube's more of a creative outlet, but I do have clients on the side, mostly cosplay models, as well as some real estate agents every now and again, just to help finance travel and other projects. So I don't have to dip into my paycheck for that stuff.
I was going to have that be the next topic is how the heck do you afford going to 20 plus cons in a year?
Last year, it was sort of like the stars were aligned. I had an inordinate amount of paid time off because you have to work about 6 months before you can have a good amount of paid time off, particularly when you're starting to work at MD Anderson. So when the time came in 2019, there were some cons I knew about, particularly the first one, which was out of state and even out of country, which was Colossal Con Cruise. I'm like, I always wanted to go on a cruise because a part of me was hoping it would be like Speed 2 Cruise Control with Willem Dafoe. And I'd be like, oh my God, we're going 5 miles an hour on a boat or whatever. But no, it was an interesting experience to say the least. Definitely much more warmer in the Nassau, Bahama area than anticipated, particularly for January. But a lot of things just kind of lined up. The prices were right. I've managed to find places to stay either for free or for practically nothing. And there are times where I got to work for conventions as their official videographer. This year, there are some conventions that I'll be working for to go to for free, but there'll be times where I'll be going to a con basically for the love of the con. The con that I'll probably be going to, probably the top 3 cons I'll be going to, the ones that I'll probably be loving the most will be Star Wars Celebration, Power Con, and New York Comic Con. So those are probably the ones where it's going to be like a love for that con in that sense.
You were mentioning your early cosplay.
Lately, I don't like. I know like my latest cosplay to date, I think was Ant-Man, and that was last year. I kind of ordered it from this one person about several years ago, and I finally got it, and it basically got to me in time when I got to meet Paul Rudd over at C2E2. It definitely was a fun experience to meet him. He was a very chill dude. I have been doing a little bit of Power Ranger cosplay every now and again. I'm currently trying to work out as much as possible, so when Power Con comes again, and I kind of debut my Secret Ranger project, I'll actually look like I actually belong in the Ranger suit. Because back in like 2 years ago, I kind of had a little bit of a gut, and I'm like, no, and I'm wearing all white, so I'm like, that's not a good look. It's not a good look at all. So
yeah, thanks for that's
no. Like this, like here's the thing. This was like skin tight. So
oh yeah.
that's different. That's different.
Yeah, my size has kind of kept me from doing too much in the way of cosplay.
No, like here's the thing. Like I've seen people of all different heights, body types, races, whether they be guy, girl, trans, black, white, Asian, they would cosplay whatever they want, and that's the beauty of it. Like I've seen like maybe like kind of like one of my friends who is on the, she's a beautiful, heavier set woman dressed up as Captain Marvel, and she did a fantastic job. And like obviously that's going to be a tight fit, but still I thought she pulled it off. I thought she looked great. And I told her, yeah, that's perfect. Just do the same thing over and over again. Just like, just kind of like raise your hand up like you're being powerful. And I just get several different takes and angles of that. So that way I can have something to work with in post-production. But I think the one thing that kind of ticks me off is this. It's not from you, but this is from people I hear a lot online, from saying, oh, this person can't be this person can't be that. It's like, who the hell are you to say that? This cosplay is for everyone. Anyone that disagrees with that, I'm sorry, but a giant hey F you, no winky smiley face with an MK at the end.
The 2-inch salute.
Oh no, like for me, I've been known to rip into people on YouTube that have basically said, oh, this person's disgusting, or this is that cosplay. But not to mention the fact, it took a lot of courage for anyone that wears a cosplay to go out there and just do what they do. I mean, it takes a lot of guts. Not to mention, most of the cosplays are uncomfortable. I can tell you, when I was wearing my Ant-Man suit, my feet were killing me. And I was just like, okay, great. When can I go back to my
things to go?
When can I go to my first things to go? Yeah, I'm like, when can I go back to my Airbnb? I mean, granted, this fits like a glove and I look badass in this, but when can I go back to the Airbnb? My feet are freaking killing me. I'd rather wear heels.
As far as representation goes, do you seek out the differences in people, the larger people, the trans people, the differences in people, trans people, some screen time? Do you trans people?
I try to get like anyone that like any like for me, I obviously seek out the people I try to get like anyone. Sometimes I try to find. For me, I obviously seek out the people I know first. For me, I obviously seek out anyone I know or have worked with in the past, because anyone I know or have worked who I've worked with or have with both. But anytime someone wants to work with me, all they have to do is send on screen. Anytime someone wants to work with me, I have this one guy. He was dressed up as a zigzag Zune. It's like a poke. It's like this weird. He was dressed up as this Pokemon. New Pokemon. It's like a poke. It's like this weird. This one guy. He asked me, say, hey, can I be a part of this one guy? Yeah, sure. Pokemon, I filmed him, and he asked me, like, he actually think used, yeah, sure. He asked me, say, hey, can I clip of it? Job, like he actually thinks used account, and he posted even to his like cosplayers, like even like even reached out to me and asked me if cosplayers like, hey, can I get a clip of this, or hey, can I get a shot of that? I'm like, yeah, I'm easy either way. Like, the thing is, like, everyone deserves to be a part of a video, regardless of their status, their notoriety, or even if they are not as well known. Like, I try to get as many different types of cosplayers in the video to show the differences, but also how beautiful it is that everyone, regardless of where they come from, their orientation, their economic status, their race, whatever, they can have a good time and just be cosplayers. It's kind of like Power Rangers in a sense. I mean, they don't really talk about, oh, I'm red because I'm like athletic. That's no, they didn't even bring that up. They just like, these people are wearing this suit because they enjoy it, but also they're there for each other. And that's something I really like about the cosplay community.
Last real question I've got is, how is the waifu search going?
Waifu search. Ironically, I think there are some girls that are interested in me. I've been told by, I know. I've just been kind of like, because I normally would take like semi-fake lewds, which involved me and my camera. Those series of photos were normally taken by my friend Sadiq of M Light Studios. So for that one, I had the idea of like, you know what? I actually want to try and do a proper sort of lewd, but using the wear to waifu sweater, because I thought that not only would be funny, but it definitely would throw a lot of my friends for a loop, and it really did. So I might do another lewd set, probably at Fan Expo Dallas for a little bit of the lulz. But there might be some girls that like this stuff, and hopefully I might land a proper waifu, so I can be like, found my waifu.
We know Mondays can suck, and we also know you love cosplay pics, so on Mondays, our Twitter feed is devoted entirely to cosplayers and their craft. Visit D20net on Twitter or search for the hashtag CosMonday to see some of the best photos we've seen in the prior week. Recent studies have shown that tabletop gaming has a positive effect on people with social anxiety, as well as those who are autistic. But what is autism? I have to admit, having no one in my family or close friends with a diagnosis, I'm not fully educated on the topic. So in order to educate everyone, myself included, I talked with Shadia Hancock, founder of awareness organization Autism Actually, about neurodiversity and the benefits gaming has on those within the spectrum.
Hello everyone, my name is Shadia. I'm an autistic advocate and I'm the proud owner and founder of Autism Actually. Autism is a neurological difference, a difference in our brain wiring. It influences how we process the world and how we interact with others on a daily basis. The autism spectrum is called a spectrum because it's extremely diverse and broad. It is not a one-size-fits-all system. I have never met one autistic person who's completely the same. Similar to the colour wheel, autism has infinite variations and different profiles. This is very different to the linear spectrum which looks at it more from severe to mild. This is why you might see a lot of autistic advocates reject the terms such as mild or severe autism. No one autistic individual is less or more autistic than the other. We are all on the autism spectrum and we all have differences and different needs. The world is not always autism friendly, which can mean that whilst autistic individuals have unique strengths, there are challenges that we can experience. Each sensory profile is different. For example, I have particular sensitivities to sound and light, and this means I often have to go out in public with noise-cancelling headphones and sunglasses to help manage my sensory sensitivities. A lot of autistic individuals also experience anxiety. Now, this can look a bit different to the average person who might experience anxiety, and it can be related to some other issues that we experience being autistic. This can be difficulty with change, transitioning, social anxiety and communication issues, sensory issues, and emotional regulation as well. We may also struggle with something called interoception, which is the ability to pick up on internal states. This includes what is known as alexithymia, or difficulty picking up on internal emotions. This can mean that it can be difficult to regulate emotions, as we may have trouble identifying what emotions we're experiencing. For example, I can sometimes identify when I'm happy or sad, but sometimes I get confused as to how to term what I'm feeling inside. This has meant that I've sometimes had emotional overload, sensory overload, or meltdowns because I've failed to identify when I was getting more anxious. Speaking of which, a lot of autistic individuals also experience meltdowns, which are a result of a loss of regulation. We might become more autistic in our traits. We might start self-regulating a lot or stimming. We might start screaming, hitting, rocking, etc. To help us try and get back to a state of equilibrium. When I talk about stimming, it is short for self-stimulation. And in the autistic community, this can mean things like rocking, finger flicking, using sensory toys like fidget spinners and spinner rings and things to help us self-regulate. And this can be really helpful when you're running D&D sessions in classrooms, etc. And the use of sensory toys and the like can be useful for any person, not just an autistic individual. Just because we seem more obviously autistic when we're in meltdown or shut down or burnout or that sort of thing, doesn't mean we're less autistic in any other given moment. It just means that our more obvious autistic traits were less apparent at that time. So, for around 20 years, there have been studies to suggest that role-playing can help autistic individuals develop crucial skills like social skills. A lot of allied health professionals, such as speech pathologists and psychologists, have started running D&D social groups to help autistic individuals, and they've found some great results. I also ran a group, a D&D social group. I noticed that there were some great skills being shown and that they were able to start socialising with each other in a structured environment where they felt safe. There are a lot of benefits to playing Dungeons & Dragons for autistic individuals. You learn consequences and outcomes in a safe environment without actually doing any physical harm. So players might be able to take risks or make unwise decisions that can be pretty funny. They also have sometimes permanent impacts in the game. So, for example, if a player decides to take on a creature that seems way beyond its skill set, it could die as a result. So they get to learn about all these things and decision making and what consequences can result from a particular action. So, for example, I had a person in my grades 4 to 7 group create a character based on their social anxiety. So when it went into a bar, the character started getting very anxious because they had social anxiety. I thought this was an interesting flavour to their character. In Dungeons & Dragons, you also have to work out how to work in a group. You're interacting together as a party, so there can be some real-life, well, not real life, but in-game consequences if you don't collaborate effectively. So some of the things I noticed is that players started to share resources. So when one of them ran out of money, the other person gave them money. They started communicating during battles to tell each other important information. They became a bit more flexible when an unusual situation arose. One thing that my players found really difficult is when they rolled a bad dice and they wanted to re-roll it to get a good one again. And I explained to them that it's actually more fun sometimes rolling bad dice and rolling bad stats and even rolling in a battle, having a bad roll, because I was able to make it into really funny situations and we all had a bit of a laugh. Often when we find our own people, suddenly our social skills become more apparent. There have been multiple studies to suggest this, that when autistic people socialise with each other and neurotypical people socialise with neurotypical people, there are less issues than when autistic and neurotypical people interact with each other. And this can be a great way to feel positive about ourselves and see the strengths and positivity in socialising. and really enhance that. As I was saying before, autism is not a one-size-fits-all spectrum. All of us are different and we may have different forms of communication. Some of us may be non-speaking or partially speaking and may be users of augmentative alternative communication, or AACs. We may use technology to help communicate or regulate ourselves in the sessions. This is just something to be aware of. These small accommodations can mean a lot to us. I personally needed a lot of help remembering the rules when I first started playing, and even now I find them hard to remember, so sometimes we'll need a bit of clarification with the rules. We might get a bit anxious about the rules and worry about them, but just, reassure them, and if you need to clarify us 5 times with the rules, don't take it personally. Even things like dimming lights when able to, and reducing sound, volume, all that sort of thing can really be helpful. Even just, encouraging people to be quiet when you're saying something to the person can be helpful, because I find that personally, background noise of people talking makes it even harder for me to hear what the person is saying. We may initially need more structure and clarification with things like character building. It can be very easy to get overwhelmed with lots of options. Firstly, before discussing this, I'd like to say, please don't disclose our autism without our permission. This issue of consent is really important. Some of us are really out and proud about our autism and will tell anyone that comes across that we're autistic. For others, we might take a bit more time. So please discuss it with us first before disclosing to other players, because this can put us in a very vulnerable position if we're not quite at that point of being able to disclose it to many people. So maybe have a discussion with the parent and the carer prior to the session to see how you can, include them and what they're comfortable with talking about, and all that sort of thing, so you're all on board on what the players' preferences are. We may initially ask a lot of questions on the first session as we get used to the game, so don't be alarmed if you start getting lots of messages and things asking for clarification. We might also need to self-regulate in the sessions, so don't be alarmed, as I said before, if we start moving around the room or start fidgeting or whatever. This is just to help us concentrate. Finally, I think Dungeons & Dragons is a wonderful game for autistic, neurodivergent, and otherwise alike to all come together and have fun in a structured setting where you can meet like-minded individuals who share your love of role-playing and gaming and all that sort of thing. I've played since I was year 8, and I've still kept in touch with my friends. We have a regular D&D campaign, and I hope that a lot more people get to play this game and experience how awesome it can be.
Autism actually is based in Melbourne, Australia, but provides resources and discussion materials worldwide. You can check them out online at autismactually.com.au. Shadia's discussion went for much longer than this segment could allow, but we have their entire talk unedited on our YouTube channel and d20nn.com. You could call it the shot heard round social media. This month, streamer Carl Reamer was booted from Twitch and dropped from the SOAR gaming roster after he accidentally fired a handgun while playing with it on screen. Now we're about to show you the incident as it was broadcast to his viewers. We understand some of you may be triggered by or otherwise don't want to see footage of guns being fired. For your benefit, we invite you now to skip this part of the show and rejoin us at the time code shown here at the bottom of the screen and in our YouTube description. Please pause the video now if you wish to skip ahead.
God damn. What the fuck?
As you may have noticed, there was a can of beer in plain sight, and Carl has acknowledged alcohol was a factor in the incident and accepted what happened next. We invited Carl onto this program to discuss the incident and what could be learned from the aftermath, but he did not reply to our requests. He did, however, post a video to his YouTube channel in which he takes full responsibility for his actions. Here's a segment from that video.
But the fact of the matter is, whether I was sober or intoxicated, guns are not a toy. They are not to be messed with. Even if I've had the gun for 2 years, you could still do something stupid like that. For Christ's sake, it went through a cup, bounced off the cup, and broke my $1,000 fucking monitor. And now I'm suspended from Twitch. I have no idea if I'm even able to get my earnings from last month. I have no idea if I'm ever going to be able to come back to Twitch. But all I can say is that I'm sorry and I deserve everything. Every bit of backlash. You would think that I couldn't do something stupider than leaving FaZe, and I did something 10 times stupider. SOAR has released me from the team, as they should. I just want to thank SOAR Gaming for just being a great team and a great group of people. They did the right thing.
There's no word on whether Carl's account will be reinstated, but Twitch community guidelines state that self-destructive behavior that can lead to physical harm is prohibited, and their harassment guidelines specifically state that brandishing a lethal weapon could lead to an immediate and indefinite suspension. In the meantime, Carl does continue to stream on his YouTube page. If you'd like to see him in a more responsible state of gaming, he's known there as Rex is Back with 2 X's. Dungeons & Dragons is enjoying more exposure with mainstream media and cross-promotion with other role-playing entities, examples being a Stranger Things starter kit, a Betrayal at House on the Hill spin-off game, and most recently, the Explorer's Guide to Waldemount, co-written by Critical Role creator Matt Mercer. But tonight, we're looking at a crossover with a gaming legend in its own right, the internationally renowned Clue detective game. This version takes place at Baldur's Gate and includes thematic changes and additions that could radically alter how you play both games in the future.
Hey there, Tyler, the D20NN contributor, and I'm here to do an official unboxing of the officially licensed Dungeons & Dragons Clue. There have been a few crossover board games between Dungeons & Dragons and various other board game companies, most notably the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, which is a spin-off of the Betrayal at House on the Hill. This is one of the more, I guess, name brand board games that they have officially crossed over with. Now, of course, being Dungeons & Dragons, there's going to be a bit more variation on the rules of Clue. According to this, an infernal puzzle box delivered by a Hellrider of Elturel has been stolen from the party of adventurers. Determined to reclaim their box of infernal secrets, one of Zariel's minions has slain and secretly replaced an adventurer unbeknownst to the rest of the members. In Clue Dungeons & Dragons, it's up to you to determine who has been replaced by a devil in disguise, what weapon was used in the execution, and where in the Forgotten Realms the infernal puzzle box could be hidden. I've already taken the liberty of unwrapping the box. I haven't opened up anything else from it, so we're going to take an official look at what we've got in here. First and foremost, we got the actual board itself. Already looks pretty different from the typical Clue board. Instead of specific rooms, we've got different sections of the city of Baldur's Gate itself. Looks like we've got the Basilisk Gate, the Dungeon of the Dead, the Undercellar, among many more other locations. Pretty well set up recreation of the classic Clue board. Looks like there's still shortcuts to be found. Now, here we go to the actual player characters we can do. Now, we've got, obviously, purple, green, yellow, white, blue, and red, like, you know, the traditional Clue characters, but these are notably D&D characters. So we've got Minsk and Boo here, we've got Rhea Mantlemorn, then Lulu, then Slobberchops, then Phalistar Fisk, and Silvira Sevakas. I'm sure I horribly butchered those names, but what are you gonna do? Next, we have the scoreboard. Again, typical Clue stuff. You've got the who, each of the characters, you've got the what, the specific weapons that were used, and the where, the different locations in Baldur's Gate. Now, speaking of the weapons, the Great Sword, the Demon Longbow, the Silver Claws, the Mastercraft Scimitar, the Horn of Blasting, and the Censer of Remembrance. Definitely a lot more interesting than the typical rope, gun, knife, whatever you'd find in any edition of Clue. Got 2d6, which is standard for any Clue game, which honestly, I mean, you'd think that in a game efficiently licensed from Dungeons & Dragons, you'd get to use a bit more dice, honestly. I mean, I know that would really completely screw up the rules, but I mean, come on, using a d20 somewhere, there's got to be a way to do it. And finally, we have our cards. And it doesn't appear that we actually have the... We've got more cards here than your typical location, item, and person cards. We've got some new ones. Zariel, specifically, there are 8 Zariel cards in the Intrigue deck. The first 7 do nothing. If you draw them, you place the card face up underneath the board so everyone can see how many Zariel cards there are. If you draw the 8th Zariel card, then Zariel and her minions have captured you and you are out of the game. That's a nice little twist on Clue, kind of an otherworldly force working against you as you're working against your other players. We have cards including Infernal Assassin, Cult of the Absolute, an Anonymous Tip, Raving Cultist, Swarm of Imps, and Beguiling Offer. So it's interesting, we've already got a different spin on the rules here, which I suppose now would be a good time to actually go over those rules and see what exactly kind of differences we're looking at here. Much like traditional Clue, you'll have a suspect, an item, and a location placed into the little manila envelope included in the game. Now, where it gets interesting are these intrigue cards. If you land on a question mark, you roll a question mark, or are moved into a location to be questioned, you may draw an intrigue card. Now, there are 2 types of these. First, there are the keepers. If you draw a keeper, you get to keep it. Makes sense there. These good cards are used in different ways throughout the game. You can have and play as many keepers as you like in any turn. Power cards. The power side shows a power that each player has. This goes back to your little character personality card. Power is usable once per game. After you use it, you turn the card over to the personality side. The personality side gives some information about that player, but has no effect on the game. For example, let's look at our classic Minsk and Boo. On the opposite side of the personality card, it says, once per game, you may randomly pick a card to look at from someone you just showed a card to. And looking at, let's look at Slobber Chops. Once per game, you may move twice, roll the dice, move, then roll again. So, nifty little abilities that each character has that you wouldn't really find in a typical Clue game, but honestly, definitely sounds like it mixed things up. The rest of the rules are your pretty standard Clue fare. In order to win, you have to make sure you can accurately guess who the agent of Zariel is. You have to guess what the weapon was, and you have to guess the exact location. If you're right, then hey, you win, the game is won. If you're wrong, the cards that you looked at go back into the envelope, and at that point, you can't make any more accusations. You can only ask questions at that point, you can't do nothing. And if everyone attempts to make an accusation and everyone is wrong, game's over. Everything's done. That's it. You know, you can play the typical game of Clue, you know, left, right, and center. You know it inside and out. But I like the different variant rules that this edition certainly has thrown out for you. You know, I really find the Zerial aspect to be really interesting. And the intrigue cards to mix up the way the game is played itself, it actually almost does put a slight betrayal twist on this classic game. And honestly, I'm all about that kind of stuff. So, my personal opinion, definitely check it out. I think I'll be playing this here pretty soon. I definitely hope you enjoy it, because pretty sure I will.
We're about out of time for this edition of Multiverse Monthly, and if you didn't see the tweet earlier this week, there's a big change coming for myself and D20NN. I've accepted a job that will see me and Tyler moving to Southwest Florida, which means by extension, D20NN headquarters is moving along with us. And the move's happening quickly. My new job starts on April 20th, so that gives us about 2 to 3 weeks to get a place and get moved in and get the studio situated in its new home so we can get next month's show produced as planned. I want to leave you with this thought. We're living in an uncertain time, and with an unseen foe, with no clear end in sight. Like any epic battle, there are villains, there are cowards, and there are heroes. Heroes that take any form, from the nurses and doctors taking care of the infected and dying, to the journalists working to cover the evolving details of a constantly changing story, to the cashiers and stockers and delivery staff at your local grocery store. You yourselves are heroes, from giving to charities and streaming games to give your friends and followers some diversion, and by offering a kind word to someone who needs it. Act heroically by being kind, and above anything else in the weeks ahead, strive to survive. I'm Chase Irwin, and for the D20 News Network, good night. We'll see you again on April 25th.